Welcome, everybody, whether you're on live or watching the video. I have the honor of, once again, this is the second time this season, our part B, talking about nutrition, is runner girl Serena, who's a runner dietitian Serena, who's on the East Coast. So it's actually like 9:30 her time. So we're so thankful that she could be here with us to talk about diet and nutrition for runners specifically. So I'm going to remove my pin and light you up here. Where are we? And it is all yours. Thank you again for coming on.
Oh, you're so welcome. I had so much fun last time, and I am so honored to be here again. So, hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. If you were here last time for part one or you watched part one on the replay, just put like a yes in the chat. Let me know that you are up to speed because we are kind of jumping off from where we left last time. We went through a lot of information last time. Today's is not going to be so juicy. I am trying to keep it to a half an hour this time. So we shall see. But if you missed the part one, I definitely recommend that you go and watch it. Yay! Lots of people were here last time. So thank you so much for coming back and hanging out with me again. I super appreciate you. So today we are talking about how not to bonk at the LA Marathon. And bonking is just a silly way of saying hitting the wall, that feeling when you're running and then all of a sudden you feel exhausted, dizzy, like you can't hold your body up any longer. Your legs won't move forward anymore. If you've ever bonked, it is a horrible feeling. Your blood sugar might be low. And a really big part of why that happens is because we are not hydrating or fueling correctly. So today we're talking all about intra-run nutrition, that's hydration and the fueling, the eating part. And then we're also going to briefly review post-run nutrition, although we really went into a lot of detail in that in part one. So I recommend you watch that again. Like David said, Coach David said, this lives on the internet forever. So you can go back and watch that on YouTube if you feel like you need a detailed recap. So, hello, who am I? I'm Serena. I'm an RRCA run coach. I'm a registered dietitian. I specialize in running nutrition, and I'm the creator of Eat Like an Athlete Boot Camp. I have been running since I was 13 years old. I have run 7 marathons, nearly 40 half marathons. I have BQ'd, and I have helped hundreds of athletes learn how to stop dieting, how to stop obsessing over losing weight and restricting and counting calories, and really learn how to embrace eating like an athlete so that you can feel better in your skin and also get those performance goals. We spend a lot of time and energy training, especially for a race like a marathon, and we really do want to go places with that training, right? We are, our body needs resources in order to adapt to the training that Coach David is prescribing. And those resources come in the form of sleep, rest, but also good nutrition. So if you haven't already, I'm going to drop in the chat a link to a free resource. This resource is going to give you a race week and a race morning guide for nutrition, as well as a carb load calculator to help you carb load correctly. I think carb loading wrong is one of the most common things I see when I start working with athletes. They think they're carb loading correctly. Carb loading can lead to a 2 to 3% performance gain. Like I said, we're putting a lot of time and effort into this race. Let's get everything we can out of it. And carb loading is just like such an easy, not easy, because it definitely requires like science and intention, but it is why not just eat a bunch of food and get faster? So do that. Make sure you sign up for that carb loading guide. Okay, so today we're going to focus on how to fuel your long run so you stop bonking, you stop pooping your pants, and you stop feeling ravenously hungry after a race. If that sounds like what you would like to learn today, can you put a yes, please, in the chat? I want to see who here is interested in learning how to eat like an athlete instead of showing up to that start line undernourished, underfueled, thirsty, not ready to go. You guys live in LA. You got to be thinking about your hydration. Yes. Okay. I love it. I love I love the exclamation points. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's start with hydration. Hydration. This is one of the ones, and I think I talked about this last time when I was joking about my emotional support water bottle. Hydration makes people roll their eyes. They're like, I know I need to drink more water. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that runners make when they are thinking about their hydration for a long run is they just think it's about drinking water, drinking more water. And poor intra-run hydration has huge potential impact on your run. It can cause GI issues. I cannot tell you how many people have diarrhea during their run or after their run, or a sour stomach, like a really sick sour stomach all day after their run because they are not hydrating correctly during their run. Fatigue, headaches, dizziness, muscle cramps, elevated heart rate. You might be doing low heart rate training. You're like, hey, my heart rate is never low. It's because you're not hydrating correctly. Dizziness, nausea, heat stroke, exhaustion. So it is really important for us to understand that hydration is worth the planning. It is worth carrying it. That's another thing that I hear people say is too annoying. I don't want to carry my hydration. I also don't like carrying anything. Running is a sport that like makes you feel free. You just want to go outside, leave the house, leave your worries, your physical belongings behind, and it's annoying to have to carry a water bottle, a vest, your fuel. I get it, but like we are signing up for a marathon. This is a huge stress on the body, and we have to be responsible. Running is a privilege, and in order to earn that privilege of racing and running that marathon, we need to treat our body with respect, which means proper hydration and fuel. Okay. So I don't want to hear it's too annoying. It's not too annoying. So we need to practice it and we need to make it a priority. I had asked Lucy and Coach David before I jumped on here, can you wear hydration vests at the LA Marathon? You can, which is awesome. So you might want to practice long runs with that hydration vest and then wear it on race day. I just had an athlete run a 20-minute PR at her marathon. I think this was 3 weekends ago, and she wore a hydration vest the whole time. It made like a huge difference in optimizing her nutrition. You can buy one of those portable bottles. I have like refilled one of those bottles during my race. It takes like a few seconds, but you know what? If you get dehydrated, you can lose performance in that regard. So maybe you're spending a few seconds filling up that water bottle, but you're not getting dehydrated and slowing down because of dehydration. Hydration belt, that's another option. If you're doing a long run and you're practicing, you can just like fill up a water bottle, leave it somewhere, and then you can do loops to grab your hydration. I think it's tricky to rely solely on aid stations for water and hydration for a race as long as a marathon. But if you are really dedicated to taking like 2 cups every single time you go to that aid station, Coach David, I actually should have asked you this before I jumped on here, but like how often are there water stops in the LA Marathon?
There's one every mile.
Okay, perfect. So for a race like that, if you wanted to really commit to taking water or fluid or electrolyte every mile, that's great. That's really frequent. You could probably make it work if you know you're not a super heavy sweater. So I think that really depends on your body's personal needs. We are aiming for 300 to 700 milligrams plus per hour of sodium. I have that little asterisk there because the science is kind of back and forth about whether taking sodium or salt during a run is really actually helpful for preventing dehydration, preventing cramps. So this is a little bit anecdotal where I have found when I work with athletes, it makes a big difference. But I do just always want to like be very clear about like what's science-based versus what's a little bit like science according to Serena. And I have found in my own personal practice that taking sodium and hitting that target is really, really helpful for cramping, GI issues, and preventing fatigue. And then also about 8 to 24 ounces per hour. That 24 plus ounces, I have seen it with people, but at that 24 plus ounce mark is when we start to run the risk of too much water. So you really definitely need to make sure you know your sweat rate and you know that that amount of fluid is really what your body needs once we start going past that threshold. This is stuff that I help athletes with when I meet with them one-on-one, really learning how to personalize that threshold of what's enough salt, what's enough fluid for you per hour, because it is very individualized. It's hard for me to be like, looking through the chat and being like, hey, you're going to need 12 ounces. Hey, you're going to need 600 milligrams. Like it is a very, it requires a lot of like tracking and attention to figure this out together. And ultimately, we want to practice what you're going to be doing on race day now. So on the course, they have electrolyte as a sports drink, they have water. You might want to be practicing with electrolyte now so you know whether you're going to be bringing your own sports drink to LA Marathon or you're going to be leaning on the electrolyte provided on the course. You want to make sure you feel comfortable drinking several ounces per hour because it definitely is an art. I think I mentioned here, like, drink every 10 to 15 minutes. I will say this is like very, again, it's very personalized where I do find a lot of athletes, if they wait too long and then they try and guzzle a bunch of fluid, they're going to get a cramp. So I am a fan of hydrating frequently with smaller amounts, rather than trying to like wait once an hour and taking like huge gulps. Like you might have a sloshy stomach or a cramp if you wait too long to start your hydration. So I'm a big fan of start hydrating early and hydrate often. But again, you can personalize this as you practice it to your body's preference. So, what are we drinking during a run? We do want our sports drinks to contain calories from sugar. And I can't remember if we talked about this in our first lecture, but sugar is not the enemy. When you are running, your body is using that sugar to fuel your run. You are taking the sugar, the calories from the sugar, and you are using it to fuel your run. The reason sugar in our sports drink is so helpful is because sugar spikes insulin, which actually helps with absorbing those electrolytes into our cells. So when we have the sugar paired with the salt, the potassium that our sports drink is giving us, we actually can absorb it better when it's paired with that sugar. If you do prefer water, if you're like, I really like can't drink a lot of sports drink, it's too sweet, it makes me sick, it doesn't feel good for me, I'm already taking all these gels. I totally get that. I do recommend salt capsules. Again, with the asterisks, because again, this is a little bit of science according to Serena. The science is back and forth about whether sodium capsules or sports drinks containing electrolytes are actually beneficial. But again, this is just my own personal practice. Electrolyte, luckily, of course, it has calories from sugar. It has 10 grams of carb per serving, and it also has 330 milligrams of sodium, which is perfect. I generally recommend that we're getting around 250 to 350 milligrams of sodium per 12 to 16 ounces of sports drink. So if you have another sports drink that you prefer, you can check the label. Make sure it's not something that has like 100 milligrams of sodium. Like that's not enough for a runner. And then also, this is definitely worth mentioning. We want to avoid sugar alcohol. So again, I think we're in this running community. We're very health conscious. Health tends to be a value that all of us tend to share. And so sometimes we get mucked up by thinking sugar-free or low calorie or low sugar is healthier for us. And again, during our run, we don't want low sugar. We don't want sugar-free. If you see ingredients ending in ITOL, sorbitol, erythritol, xylitol, these are sugar alcohols that actually have a laxative effect, and we want to avoid them. Okay, we do not want to be taking in xylitol or erythritol or sorbitol during our long run because we are going to regret it big time. So I forgot to put this in present mode. So definitely want to make sure that we are thinking about our sports beverages. We are being intentional about taking in electrolytes, aiming for that 3 to 700 plus milligrams per hour. We are drinking enough fluid, that 8 to 24 ounces per hour. I think it goes without saying that when it's hotter, the sun is shining, it's not a cloudy, cold day, we're going to need more fluid versus a day when it's colder, the sun's not out, you're going to need less fluid. And again, this is where I keep saying you have to personalize this experience, you have to pay attention. This is why it's really helpful to work with a dietitian because kind of keeping all this information in order can be super helpful because this does make a big difference. Okay, so I hear all the time, I tried taking sugary gels, I tried taking sugary sports drink, I got diarrhea, I got a sick stomach, I don't feel good. And that makes perfect sense because taking too much sugar, it's such a fine line, it's so annoying. Too little sugar, you're not going to absorb the electrolytes. Too much sodium, or I'm sorry, too much sugar, you're going to get osmotic diarrhea. You're not going to feel good. We really have to find that sweet spot. I think about it like Goldilocks, right? We don't want too cold, too hot. We want just right. We don't want too little sugar. We'll hit the wall. We'll get diarrhea. We'll fatigue. We don't want too much sugar. We'll get diarrhea. We need to get that sweet spot, okay? So again, tracking sodium, tracking your fluid intake. I like to look at the dew point. If you go to weather.com or whatever you use, look at what the dew point is and track that sodium and fluid intake versus that dew point. When that dew point gets above 60, that's when we know generally we might need to push the sodium and the fluid because that's where physiologically it becomes much harder for runners to regulate their temperature and feel comfortable during a long run. So definitely want to make sure that we're just paying attention to these things, taking them into account when we're planning what are we bringing with us on our long run. If it is really hot and humid, we can use pre-hydration. We can really prep our body for that hot and humid run with sodium, with fluid. You can do that the night before. You can do that before you leave on your run. We are going to ask the question, are you hydrating well on a daily basis? Are you like, dang it, I'm going on a long run tomorrow. Let me chug some water before bed. Or like, oh, I'm going on a run at 3 o'clock today. Let me chug some water. If that's you, I don't care how perfect we nail your intro run hydration, you're dehydrated, my friend. Like you're not going to feel good. So we always need to start with what we were talking about in part one of this lecture, which is making sure you're getting enough hydration every single day of your life. We don't have to be perfect, but maybe 80% of the time. And then I just want to throw this out there because I think we all get targeted on Instagram with like H drop sensor and all these different fancy gadgets on the market. Unfortunately, none of them have really strong science to say that they are effective and they work. And unfortunately, the most effective method of figuring out your sweat rate, figuring out your sodium losses is really just tracking and then seeing how you feel, right? Tracking, I took this much fluid, this much sodium, this was the dew point, this is how I felt. And collecting that data, which I know is so cumbersome and so annoying, but really that is the most accurate hydration method. Now, I will throw this out there. There are sports companies that will use the science that doctors use with cystic fibrosis patients to check sweat levels. And if you can find a sports nutrition facility that does that, that is your best bet. Besides, like I said, just tracking the data. So, but I don't want you guys like spending money on these like Instagram ads for like different sensors that you wear. They're not super effective. I don't know. I think you could spend your money better, but that's just my personal take. Okay, but I wanted to give you something hard and fast that you guys can go home and you can try. So, if you are trying to figure out where to start with this process of tracking your intake, you're like, Serena, I have no idea like how much I should take. Like, where do I start with this? We can calculate your sweat rate. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna wake up in the morning. We're going to have our pre-run nutrition, whatever that looks like for you. Then you're going to go to the bathroom. You're going to empty everything out of your body. You're going to strip down and you're going to weigh yourself. This is your pre-run weight. Then you're going to go running for 60 minutes. And during the 60-minute run, you're not eating, you're not drinking, and you shouldn't be using the bathroom. Because if you use the bathroom, you're supposed to measure what you excrete to then put back into the calculation. So generally, I tell my athletes, if you really need to use the bathroom, let's just do this again a different day because I don't expect you guys to be like carrying your excrement with you on your run home. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our pre-run. Oh, we're going to come home from our run. We're going to weigh ourselves again in the nude. Then we take our pre-run weight, we subtract it from our post-run weight, and then we have how much we lost in that 1 hour of running. And that is an estimate of your sweat rate. If you are a person who is losing over 24 ounces per hour, we probably wouldn't replace it directly 1-to-1. Just because, again, like I said, as we start to get over that 24 ounces per hour, we're now balancing the risk of low blood sodium with hydration. And so, like I said, at that point, we would tweak it and work together to make sure that we can find a sweet spot for you. But if that sweat rate is under 24 ounces per hour, let's say you lose 12 ounces of fluid, you could say to yourself, I need to run and drink 12 ounces per hour when the weather is this way, right? We're looking at the dew point. If the dew point is 42 and I go running and I lose 12 ounces per hour, I know for runs when it's 42-ish degrees dew point, that I am going to be needing to drink 12 ounces per hour of fluid. Okay, so like I said, hydration is like such a beast. I think again, we think it's drink more water, bring water on your run, and it's definitely more um complex than that. And I think the reason I wanted to start with hydration is because I have people come to me, they say, I can't eat, I get sick, I can't eat, I don't feel good, I feel terrible on my runs, I have diarrhea on my runs, and I'm telling you, like 8 times out of 10, it's a hydration problem. It's not even a fueling problem. It's not about pre-run fuel, night before fuel, intra-run fuel. It's hydration. And so I like cannot stress this enough. Your hydration is so, so, so important. Okay, long run fueling. So when we are running long, again, going back to that conversation about sugar, sugar is our friend. We are not eating sugar, sitting on the couch, and the sugar just has to like find its way to our fat stores if it's not being utilized by something else. The sugar is being used right then and there to fuel your body. So I think we need to have a conversation about how sugar, there's science that sugar can be bad for your health. Absolutely. If sugar is hanging out, is not being used by your muscles, if you are not insulin sensitive, it can create advanced glycated end products. It can cause damage to the body. But that is not what's going to happen when you're taking sugar during your long run. I think it's important for us to acknowledge, like, yes, sugar can be bad, and then sugar can be good. Sugar can give your body the energy to push harder. When we push harder, we are able to get fitter. When we get fitter, our body has a better capacity to take the sugar we eat and turn it into glycogen or stored sugar, right? Remember I said sugar is bad when it doesn't get used by the body and created into glycogen or burned as fuel, right? Sugar can be a problem if it becomes an advanced glycated end product, if it contributes to too much weight gain in a person so that they are beyond the weight that is healthiest for their genetics. But when we are taking sugar during our run, we are creating fuel, we are keeping stress hormone lower, we are able to push ourselves harder to get fitter. Okay, so I really want us to take our fears around sugar and I want us to set them aside. Um, when we are thinking about natural sources of sugar versus more processed sources of sugar, again, I don't feel strongly that we need to be getting the most nutrient-dense sources of carb during our run. We can get nutrient-dense sources of carbohydrate during breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, but during the run, we just need sugar that digests well. So, sure, if you use raisins as a fuel or banana chips as a fuel, are you getting some vitamin C and some antioxidants that you're not getting if you're using nerds? Yeah, you are, but I again like I just don't think it's that important. So, that's just my personal stance is that we need the carbohydrate to fuel the performance, and I'm really more focused on you choosing a carb that is palatable, that you can tolerate, that is effective for you. I think different people have different priorities. Some people are trying to find the most cost-effective source of intra-run carb, and then we could do something like a gummy candy, like these Scandinavian swimmers at Trader Joe's. If you are somebody who really is wanting a more natural source, we could do maple syrup, we can do dried fruit, we can do banana chips. This isn't necessarily super natural, but you could take waffles, freezer waffles, and douse them in syrup. It's kind of sticky, but you can eat those while you're running. You could do granola bars, like chewy granola bars. Those are more cost-effective carbohydrates. Then we have our performance nutrition products, right? Like GU has been a sponsor of the LA Marathon in the past, and so they may be provided on the course. You might want to lean on those carbohydrates the course is providing once Lucy and Coach David announce what will be the GU, or I'm sorry, the gel on the course. You might want to practice with that gel. So that way you don't have to carry it, right? You're like, okay, that's like one or two less gels to carry because LA Marathon's providing them. That would be something to consider. But there are so many different products on the market, and different people just have different personal tolerances and preferences. And then also we're thinking about how electrolyte or whatever sports nutrition product you're using for hydration is going to have sugar in it. And so that also can help us get enough carbohydrate during our run. So during our run, we are aiming for 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. 90, um, I would say most people fall in the 45 to 60 grams per hour category. As we start to get to 90, this might be for people who are like really extremely fit, have a lot of training cycles under their belt. Their glycogen stores are really good at like holding on to fuel, and or it could be a person who is doing like an ultra marathon, which I know is not LA Marathon, but is going to be out there for a really long time. So I would say it's safe to say most of you are going to fall in that 45 to 60 grams per hour. So what we're looking at is saying if I'm drinking electrolyte and I'm getting 10 grams of carb per serving there, that's 10. If I then take, two gels and I'm getting 45 grams of carb that way, 45 plus 10 is 55. You're falling in that 45 to 60 grams per hour range. So we do want to be intentional about thinking, how do I hit that target of 45 to 60 grams per hour? We don't want to say to ourselves, I'm going to fuel every 5 miles. Because what if every 5 miles, if you're fueling, that means you're only getting 20 grams of carb per hour? We need to be thinking about it more intentionally of how many of these food items do I need to eat per hour to hit 45 grams of carb, right? If we're using Scandinavian swimmers, that might mean you have to eat 20 gummies per hour in order to hit that target when paired with a sports drink. And so we can't just be like, oh, I take 2 gummies per hour and yes, Serena, I'm taking fuel. That is not enough fuel, right? We have to, again, go back to the science. We have to make sure we're getting enough. It's not good enough to be like, oh yeah, I just grabbed some gummies and I just shoved them down my throat when I felt like it. It's not a good excuse to say I wasn't hungry on my run, so I didn't eat. A lot of us don't get hungry on our run. Our nervous system is kind of wired. We're not feeling super in rest and digest mode, but we do need to fuel again because running is a privilege and we need to fuel our body with the resources to support training. Okay, so when do we up our carbs? I think right now, Coach David had said you guys are running like 9 to 12 miles, not hours, 9 to 12 miles as your long run, which is awesome. Good job, guys. Very proud of you. So we want to start thinking about adding more carbohydrates to our intra-run carb. And also this kind of goes back to lecture one, but even to our performance plate, like having more carbs in our breakfast, lunch, dinner, as we add more miles, as we add more intensity, as we have a training practice that maybe has more hills or elevation, or if the dew point gets very hot above 60, okay? So if I'm going running tomorrow and I know I'm doing 15 miles for the first time and it's a tempo run, there's a tempo pace in the middle there, and maybe it's also 60 degrees, maybe I usually take 45 grams per hour, but on that run, I'm gonna try and push it to 55 grams per hour and see how I feel, okay? So we do just want to kind of be aware that there's a range. And so maybe if you're trying to start with 30, maybe you try and up it to 45. If you're starting with 45, maybe you try and up it to 60. And so we can just play around with that. Fueling requires practice. Again, I keep saying the same thing over and over. If you struggle with tolerating interim fuel, start with your hydration. I don't even want to talk to you about what you're eating during your run. I want to talk to you about how you are hydrating because adequate hydration improves digestive tolerance. The other thing though we can think about if you're like, Serena, I swear I am nailing my hydration. Look at me, I'm doing beautiful. Awesome. I'm so proud of you. So now what we're going to think about is how do we slowly increase the amount of carb you take per hour? Okay. Another great intro on fuel is applesauce. And I actually really like using applesauce as like a training wheels carb and having people start with some applesauce before the run, see how that feels, and then starting to slowly increase the amount of carb you take per hour. So yeah, maybe we're aiming for 45 grams of carb in a month from now, but maybe on our run this weekend, we take half a gel or half a pack of gummies or something and just start with 10 grams of carb per hour and see how that feels. If you are going to be running more than 4 hours in the marathon, we just want to know that as we get to that like 3 or 4 hour mark, we might want to start to go closer to that 60 to 90 grams per hour mark. So you might be aiming for more like 60 to 75 grams per hour. And I usually have my athletes who are running greater than 4 hours to add a little snack in that has some fat or protein around that 3 to 4 hour mark just to support blood sugar balance. And so this could be something like a tortilla with some peanut butter, or a handful of cashews. Just because if we're taking so much sugar for hours upon hours, sometimes something happens called rebound hypoglycemia. And so having just a little bit of fat or protein will help to protect against that. But this is something you need to practice during training. So you're not going to be doing any 4 hour training runs, most likely. But what you could kind of do is maybe you have a long run, a 14-mile run coming up. Maybe you can just practice having that peanut butter tortilla, at that hour and a half mark and just make sure it doesn't feel super bad in your belly. Just see how it feels. I also encourage people to practice their fueling throughout their training. And so I see this, I hear this all the time, and it quite honestly, like, it infuriates me. People are like, I don't fuel for 8 mile runs. Like, I don't care how many miles your run is. If your run is 75 plus minutes, you can practice your race day strategy. This is exciting. If you think about the LA Marathon like your Broadway debut, right? Like you are going to be on stage. You are going to be, doing the thing that you have been training for, you have been practicing for. No one goes to their Broadway debut and they haven't practiced every line, practice wearing their costume, right? When we get to that marathon starting line, we should be wearing clothes we know are comfortable. We should be wearing shoes we have run in before. We should be using fuel that we have used time and time again, okay? So if you're waiting to practice race day strategy on your 20 miler because like that's the one run that you think is long enough to, have fuel for, you're doing it wrong. And so again, I say that with so much love, but we don't want to be waiting to earn our food to have a long enough run to start fueling. We need to fuel on every run that's over 75 minutes. Which brings me to post-workout fueling, okay? So we did go over this in our first session together, but we're just going to review it. So what should we eat after our workout? So we should be eating protein, about 20 to 40 grams of protein. So if you eat meat or fish, that is simply just a palm-sized portion. If you are using eggs, that's 3 eggs. If you're using cottage cheese, that's about a cup of cottage cheese. The gold standard Optimum Nutrition protein shakes have 24 grams of protein. And the reason we're aiming for this 20 to 40 grams is because it does something where it spikes muscle protein synthesis, which is just a fancy schmancy way of saying it helps you build muscle. You go out on these runs, you cause these little tears to your muscles, and we want our body to repair itself and come back stronger. And so we need protein and carbohydrate to adequately repair our muscles. This doesn't mean fat is bad, it doesn't mean vegetables are bad, but it just means they're not effective in helping you to recover. So if you know you're somebody who doesn't have a big appetite after a run, if you know you're somebody who struggles to eat after a run, I don't want you coming home and then filling up on like carrot sticks and hummus because you're not really giving your body the tools that that your body needs to recover and to adapt to that workout. I want you having a protein shake and a banana. I want you having some waffles or pancakes with some Greek yogurt. I want you having protein and carbohydrate. I always get the question, how much carbohydrate? So when we met last time, we weren't doing very long runs, and I kind of said, it's not, we don't have to stress a lot about those carbohydrates. We want to make sure we have some kind of carbohydrate and we're really getting that protein. Now that we are doing longer runs, we want to make sure that we're getting about half a gram of carb per pound of body weight paired with that protein, okay? If you don't know your body weight, if weighing yourself is something that you're not interested in doing, then I would say just try and have around 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate or two cups or two fists of carbohydrate paired with that protein. And here are some examples of some post-workout nutrition snacks. We could do a protein shake and a banana. We could do some beef jerky and some dried fruit or Cheerios. We could do some edamame, really good for my plant-based athletes with some dried fruit, almost like a trail mix. Cottage cheese with honey, walnuts, and cereal, like a kind of like a granola bowl type situation. Cheese sticks, really portable and easy protein source with apple slices, honey, and peanut butter. That's kind of like a little charcuterie board situation. A tuna salad with some crackers, a sweet potato with some like cinnamon, vanilla yogurt, and honey, hard-boiled egg, make like a egg salad essentially with some bread. Vienna chickpea snacks, another really good option for my plant-based athletes, has protein and carbohydrate in there. Or some ricotta toast with honey is a really good post-workout nutrition snack as well. Okay, guys. So this is our last session together at LA Roadrunner group meetings, and I have been like so honored to be here working with you guys. And so I really hope you take all of the information we discussed today and you put them in a plan. I don't want to hear it's too annoying to carry hydration. I don't want to hear your stomach is too sick, you can't do it. Again, I'm saying this with love and compassion because I have been there, I have felt all those things. But again, running is a privilege, and it's really important that you're doing the things to support your body. If you need help with making sure you're eating enough, making sure that you are problem solving these GI issues you're getting during your run. If you're noticing that you're waking up in the middle of the night hungry, or if you're having trouble sleeping or staying asleep during training, if you don't know how to make sure you're doing carb loading correctly, if you're struggling with supplements, you have like a million supplements, you don't know which ones you should be taking. If you have over the top hunger, that's not normal. If you have no appetite, that's not normal. If you want to make sure you have the best intra-run fueling plan so that you can PR this LA Marathon, I am super happy to work with you, and you actually can use the code LARR at checkout to save, and you can book a strategy call with me, and I will put the link in the chat here. And you can check that out if you're interested, but obviously no pressure. But yeah, I mean, working with athletes and helping them to really take all of the information that's on social media, all the information we have gone through in our two sessions together, and to really personalize it to, okay, Serena, like what do I need? Like me personally, what do I need to do? We can create a game plan that is specific to you. If you have questions, send me a DM at Runner Girl Dietitian or email me, Serena at serenamarieRD.com. I love talking nutrition. I think you guys now know that after like an hour and a half of me blabbing at you guys. So there is no question that is too silly. Please make sure to feel free to reach out to me. I am super happy to help. So Lucy had sent me some questions before I jumped on here from Instagram. Someone had asked, I'm hungry right before bed. What are some easy late night snack ideas? I loved this question because it's something that we've kind of talked around it, but we haven't specifically addressed it in our two lectures. And so what I always want to say when we have hunger, is we want to investigate. Why are you hungry right before bed? Is it because you haven't eaten in three to 4 hours? Then it's normal to be hungry, right? Then I'm like, okay, cool. Like you're hungry because you haven't eaten. You ate dinner at 5 o'clock. You're going to bed at 9 o'clock. That makes perfect sense. I'm proud of you for honoring this hunger. You have increased nutrient needs right now. You're running 12+ mile long runs. Some easy late night snack ideas would be If you eat dairy, having whey protein like cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, these dairy products that contain whey and casein are actually really awesome to have during intense training periods because the way the protein kind of is digested and works in the body is it really supports optimal recovery muscle protein synthesis while we sleep. So having like Greek yogurt with honey and some cereal and some berries before bed, or having like cottage cheese toast with everything but the bagel seasoning and some cucumbers before bed, could be really, really beneficial. You can make a like sweet treat, maybe some like Optimum Nutrition has whey protein in it. Having that before bed, that could be a good idea. And of course, we're gonna kind of zoom out and depending on you and your needs, maybe adding some extra carb before bed. Again, this is a very personalized experience, but that protein before bed can be really beneficial when we're in those hard training seasons. Now, if you're hungry right before bed and you ate dinner an hour ago, um, I would kind of dive into it further. We would kind of ask ourselves, so one, is it true hunger? Are you just feeling like bored and you want a snack? But if you're like, no, like Serena, I am definitely really truly hungry, I would want to look earlier in the day and I'd want to say, okay, if you just ate dinner an hour and a half ago, why is this hunger hitting right before bed? Are you not eating enough during the day? And so it's fine to have a snack, but we're really wanting to look at making sure you're eating enough all day long to support optimal nutrition and training, rather than saying like, oh, you know, like my energy's lagging. I've been training for a few weeks. I'm starting to notice these nagging injuries popping up. That can all be the result of that hunger, right? Your body trying to give you a cue of like, hey, you're not eating enough. So it seems like such a straightforward question, but whenever I hear someone noticing hunger, I always want to kind of dive into it further. So I'm really happy. Whoever asked that question, thank you so much. Looking for fuel advice before double digit runs, really encourage you to go back to lecture one. We had a very long, very detailed pre-run nutrition segment, and it's a little bit, it's not very simple because it kind of depends on when you're fueling. Like if you're eating with 30 minutes to digest or less, we generally are aiming for about 30 grams of carbohydrate before your run. But because this run is a double digit run, I would say you probably would have to take your intra-run fuel pretty early on, like at that 15-minute mark, because that 30 grams of carb isn't really sufficient to support a long run. So what I mean by that is maybe you do your 30 grams of carb pre-run, you have 30 minutes to digest, you grab a Pop-Tart and you drink some sports drink. It's 5 a.m. Let's say you're like, Serena, I'm not waking up earlier to eat. Okay. Then you go on your 13-mile run because you only took, 30 to 40 grams of carb before this long run. I'm going to have you start fueling at 15 minutes to make up for the fact that you kind of wimped out on that pre-run snack. Generally, we just don't have enough like digestive capacity to have enough carbohydrate before a run if we only have 30 minutes to digest. And again, I go into this in detail in lecture one. If you have closer to that 1 hour, hour and a half to digest, we're aiming for about 1 to 4 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate. I usually tell people around 1 to 2 grams per kilogram is usually enough. So maybe that's like a bagel with some banana and some peanut butter, a sports drink, and then you go out on your run and you can start the intra-run fueling process at that 30-ish minute mark or so. How do you meet 60 grams of carb per hour? We talked about that earlier tonight, and it's really just kind of making sure you look at your fuel that you're choosing. If you're using candy, we would kind of see, okay, I need to take 8 gummies to get 20 grams of carb. That means to get 60 grams of carb, I would need to have 24 of those gummies per hour. So we really want to be making sure that we're looking at the type of fuel we're taking in and the nutrition facts, how many grams of carb we are getting, and then we're making sure we're getting that 45 to 60 grams per hour. Natural intra-run fuel ideas. We talked about this earlier. It could be maple syrup or honey sticks. It could be dried fruit. It could be like banana chips. But again, natural intra-run fuel is not necessarily superior and sometimes can cause GI issues because some of those things like banana and Dried fruit do have fiber in them. Something like honey has a lot of fructose in it, which can cause GI issues just from the way it's absorbed. Um, and so I'm not like trying to knock natural fueling, but I just think we have this implicit belief that it's better because it's natural, quote unquote. And I just want to challenge that. If you're having GI issues when you're fueling with maple syrup and raisins, try the Scandinavian swimmers, try the goo gel or the scratch gummies and like see what happens. So that would be my advice. Okay, guys, let's see here. I did a little bit better job. I still went over my half hour. Um, if I'm training with mustard, I'm wondering about how many packets I should be consuming. Mustard is very low in carbohydrate and calories. I have no idea, but I don't think mustard should be a primary source of fuel because it is so low calorie. So I would say if you want to add mustard just for like the flavor, a packet once an hour or something, but you need a different source of calories and nutrition during your long run. We love that you carry a bottle. Yay! I love that. Yes, agree. Um, okay, guys, is there any other questions?
While we're waiting for other people to kind of jump
Yeah.
in, let me tell you all something that just adds to completely to what you already said about getting in as many carbohydrates per hour as you can kind of stomach.
Hmm.
And a guy this past year who won Western States 100 mile, Caleb Olson, finished with the second fastest race finish time on that Western States 100-mile race, the classic race. He was doing 80 to 100 grams of carbs per hour. A woman named Ruth Croft won the Ultra Trail du Mont de Blanc in Europe, obviously, by doing also a 100-mile race, by doing and you mentioned ultras as having greater need for carbs. So listen to this. She finished with approximately 120 grams per hour.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, comparatively speaking, um, three Oreo cookies have 21.6 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So if you're talking about 30, essentially, what is that? 15 cookies to equal about 120 grams per hour. Now, she did not do Oreo cookies, but the equivalent of that would probably make just about any one of us completely sick. But that they built up to that in training. One of the problems that I have a question with is we do most of our training with a heart rate that's lower than our marathon race pace. So we're able to absorb more calories more easily because, of course, your stomach diverts blood away from the stomach when you're running. So you're not as efficient in digesting things like carbs. But because our heart rates are lower most of the time, would testing carbohydrate at such a low heart rate, minute and a half slower than marathon race pace, would that be an effective thing? What we've been doing is we'll give out gels either before or after a period on our long run when we're going at marathon race pace. And we'll do that over several weeks, but usually just later in the season only because we only have so many gels and we have hundreds of right now we have like 700 members. That's a lot of gels. um what do you think of that idea, or should they
I
just be gels all the
no, I love that idea. And I actually will have my athletes, even if a track workout or a speed workout is not 75 minutes, I'll be like, why don't we
time?
try taking um that intra-run fuel, like it depends what the track workout is, right? Like if it's like
Mm,
400 repeats, that's not necessarily like race pace. But if it's like something like a mile repeat or something, or like a tempo runner, like you said, like a marathon race pace, trying to take that intra-run fuel, even if it's a shorter run, just to kind of
mm.
practice like what that feels like in your gut. Yeah, that's an awesome idea, Coach David.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And by the way, I should point out that electrolyte is used on the course in 8-ounce cups. Those white cups that you guys all see us using, they're the identical cups. I take them from the same stack of cups that the LA Marathon has. I'm stealing LA Marathon cups. So they're identical. Um, I mean, I have the key to the joint. I'm not really stealing them. Anyway, they know how many I'm taking. Anyway, the point being is usually on the marathon, they fill up about half a cup of these 8-ounce cups. So that's about figure four, maybe a little more than half is 5 ounces. Now, you said that for 12 ounces, if I recall correctly, it was about 10 grams of carbohydrate for 12 ounces. Did I hear that correctly? Something like
For
that?
electrolyte, you're saying?
For electrolyte.
I don't remember. I can Google it. What the
Yeah, I
servings?
think you
You
had
know,
a
it
slide.
was per serving.
Right.
Um,
And I think each serving was like 12 ounces or something like that. Oh, there you go. Um,
was it here?
or maybe
Yeah,
it's
but
24.
I didn't write the serving, so that was real helpful, Serena.
It's
Hold on,
in there
I can
somewhere.
Google it. Yeah. Um,
Oh yeah, there you go.
yeah, but I didn't write the serving size.
Yeah, electrolyte is served on the course and contains 330 milligrams of sodium. And all right, that's sodium. That's a fair
Okay,
amount of
so this
sodium.
says 16 ounces according to the, but this
Oh,
is
got
the,
it.
okay, this is the, because do you guys use the powder or do you use the pre-made stuff? Do you know?
Yeah, no. Um, on the marathon course, they're
Mhm.
using a powder and they're
Okay, so it's
stirring it
16.
in the water. So
Mhm.
God knows what the exact amount is. But based on that, a fourth of, 16 ounces, thank you for doing it. A fourth of that 10 would be about 2.5 grams, about 2.5, 3 grams of carbs per cup. Does that make
I think it's so helpful that you're giving that information because that's always something that is hard for me. If someone's like, "Oh, I'm running the Cape Cod Marathon," I'm like, I have no idea how big those cups are, and so it's really helpful for you guys listening to hear there's about 5 ounces of fluid in that cup. If I am not going to bring something with me to carry my hydration, but I know if I grab 2 cups, I'm getting 10 ounces every mile and I'm running X, my pace is X per mile, you
Hmm.
guys can figure that out to hit how much hydration and also how much carbohydrate and sodium. So that actually is like really helpful because of how frequent the water stops are. And then also having that information, Coach David, that makes it possible to potentially not need to wear something again, just depending on your sweat rate.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And like you said, sweat rate is so different.
mhm,
Um, I had one athlete who was a really talented guy, you know. By the way, high sweat rates help you cool your body off quicker, but more efficiently. But he needed to consume over 1,000 milligrams of sodium, milligrams of sodium per
mhm,
hour. 1,000.
mhm.
That's just outrageous. He was just dripping sweat. I mean, but very efficient runner. Um, anyway,
Question,
so,
question for
oh, hang on
Serena.
one sec, David. Let me
Sure.
do some math. If someone took in 2 gels per hour, now goo is like 22, 23 grams per gel. I'm not saying everybody has to use goo or whatever. Right now, we don't have a contract for a gel yet. We will. It's just a contractual thing. But we may be using goo again. But so 22, 23 grams of carbs per gel. And if you did two of them, that's about 40. 44 to 46 grams per hour, 2 gels per hour. And then if you did what about 3 to 4 cups of electrolyte with half the cup filled, those 8 ounce white cups that we always use, um, you'd be getting in another 10 grams. So that would give you about 56 grams total. Um, does that add up? Am I math? I'm terrible at
Yeah.
math.
Oh, you nailed it. Yeah. And so I think
So,
people hear 60 grams. Oh my God. But it's very manageable. Yeah.
yeah. So, based on all of this information, hopefully you can get your volume of carbohydrate intake up per a marathon. And that means figuring out how to carry all of this,
Hmm.
gels or whatever. You mentioned applesauce. I love baby food, which is basically mulched fruit, applesauce and berries and all that. I use baby food, but then I'll also supplement with mineral pills to get in the sodium because
Hmm.
there's really no sodium in baby food with the fruit.
Hmm.
Um, so now, David, you had a question, I think.
For during training, I want to do a vest, camelback. How easy and quickly can it be to refill a
Hmm.
vest during training?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the easiest, quickest. So what you could do is you can just say, again, getting dehydrated slows you down, right? So even if it takes a minute, and you would like practice it during training, because I feel like the first time I, used my Nathan vest, I was like, what the heck? How do I do this? And then now I've done it a million times and I can like do it in my sleep. So you would want to practice during training. But yeah, like you are going to have to like unclip it, take it off. I don't know exactly how a camelback work, but with mine, I'd have to like take it off. I'd have to unzip it. I'd have to unscrew the top and then I'd have to fill it up. And it's mine is like, I think 1 liter. I can't remember. So it takes a while to fill. Another thing you could do though, it's up to you, is you could have your vest and then you could also have one of those collapsible water bottles with you. I think it's Hydro Pack is the brand I have. And that way you could like keep that in like your pocket or like the pocket of the camelback. And then once the vest runs out, you could switch to filling up the water bottle because that's just much quicker and easier. Obviously you'll have to fill it more frequently because it doesn't hold as much as the vest. But I think that's what I would do personally.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I do have to go, guys. It's 10:30 here and my baby's crying. So I'm like, need to get.
Oh,
But thank you so much. If I didn't answer your question, please email me, Serena@SerenaMarieRD.com. I put it in the chat and I will also pull this up again. You can also DM me. I'm on Instagram nonstop. So I'm super happy to DM with you. Coach David, Lucy, thank you so, so much for having me. This has been like such a pleasure and I've had so much fun getting to know you guys.
thank you so much for chiming in and doing all this. We had quite a lot of people online, and there will be a lot more watching the recording. And with that, I think I'm going to say good night. Everyone live, stay on. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to stop the recording and say good night to those watching the recording. And then we'll continue on with anyone who had any questions. So, people watching the recording, good night. And Serena, thank you again very, very much. Save your child. We'll talk to you soon, everybody, and good night.